So today we're going to be talking. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all. I want to go over the last part of the research, the channeling that we had last week, or the channeling of Lord Melchizedek, and what he said about identity. I want to expand on that and stretch it out because I think it's very timely for us to understand and comprehend through the acceleration process that we're going through, the quickening, where karma is being accelerated, experiences are being accelerated, and everything is moving so fast that whatever you thought you were, things are going around you so quickly, changing around you so quickly that you suddenly are not that what you thought you were, and the moment you acclimate yourself to whatever transition that you're going through, it seems like a few months later, it begins to shift and change into something else. So I want to talk about this because I want you to understand what we're talking about. So first off, I'm going to start talking about karma. I know we spoke about it before, but I had a conversation with my friend early on today, and this is the early afternoon, and she said something to me because I was asking her, what do you think karma means? And she said retribution. And I was in total shock. And I'm like, no. Karma in Sanskrit means to do or to make. In Hebrew, it is tikkun, and it actually means to repair or to correct. It is not retaliation. It is not retribution. It is not vengeance. It is not revenge. And in fact, if that were the case, let's say in a past life, I may have hurt you, and in this lifetime, you would want to hurt me. If this was the law, then in the next life, I'm going to go hurt you again, and so on and so forth. The pendulum would never stop. What karma actually means is to correct a mistake, to correct a misalignment and a misunderstanding. And that correction is made by an acceptance of your 50%, your co-creation. So if you have karma with somebody, or you sense you have karma with them, or they seem to be your perpetrator in this lifetime, in a past that you don't remember, going way back since the beginning of creation until now, you, your family, your ancestors may have caused harm to them, their family, and their ancestors, and that is the reason why they are on the attack in this lifetime. And if you can recognize your 50%, you can then have an attitude of forgiveness and love, asking for forgiveness for wrong action, deed, action, reactions that you may have done, or things that you have withheld. And as you do this, and it's come from a very sincere and deep spiritual place, the correction is made and the karma ends. It is not retribution. It is not vengeance. It is not an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It is more transcendental than that. And it requires 50% responsibility. So when you have karma with somebody, that karma means that you have to figure out a way. And the reason you have the karma is that, and again, here is the identity part of this. We are not as smart as we think we are. You may think yourself, I've never hurt anybody in this lifetime. I'm completely innocent. I am just the undriven snow, etc. But in a past life, guarantee you, you were not a saint. I've said this before, even for me in this lifetime. My halo is slightly tilted. I cannot pretend that I have never done things that were wrong. That would be inauthentic and untrue. And therefore, having knowing this, when I sense I have karma with somebody, I would begin to ask myself question and query, try to figure out what is it that I'm not seeing, what part of a past life that I may have had with this person that's now coming to the forefront as a thing for me to let go. Because when there is a crisis that's showing up, it's the universe telling you, Pierre, solve this. This needs to be solved now. You need to correct this now, repair this. And as I move into the spirit of repair, particularly when somebody is under your skin and irritating and causing you harm and causing you harm, when that happens, it's not about them. It's about you correcting the karma. And if you can figure that part by going in meditation and prayer and waiting in surrender and being so neutral to them, you will begin to sense as if you were in a fog, pieces of the karma that you may have with the person. The same way we do the morphogenic listening. If you sit quietly and you ask yourself, what is my connection? What could I possibly have in the past could I have done to this person to cause them to be so angry at me now? And then you sit quietly and let whatever impression, whatever feeling, whatever sound, whatever sensation that wants to come to come. Now, it may not come immediately. It may take several days, or it may be in your dreams that something comes to you, but something will come because you and I have access to that information. And you will understand. And the moment you know this, when you say, please forgive me, at that moment you think of, okay, I offended you in this manner. So please forgive me for this offense. And love is the ultimate nullifier. It's the greatest creative principle that exists in the world, in the entire universe, but it is also what also nullifies all negative energies. So when you can do that and you release, you can acknowledge that and you ask for forgiveness and you change that forgiveness into love and you say, I love you unconditionally and I let go. You release it. You disconnect, you become non-attached. And the karma very quickly, and if you repeat this multiple times, the karma will eventually unravel. And when you think of the person, in fact, if the person was in your life, was being negative, all of a sudden they will lose interest in you because if the connection that you had with them, let's talk about frequency for a second. If you were +5 and their frequency was -5, because now you've done all of this work, you will become zero charge, which means you will become neutral. They will have no way of connecting and hooking back into you. They will go somewhere else and seek someone else that's +5. So, and honestly, what you're doing when you're doing this is that in the past life or in even early part of this life, who you thought you were was false. That's where the identity comes in. Who you thought we were was false. Let's say you were an a-hole to this person in the past life because you thought you were being catty or you were being a bully or you were being or you were afraid and this was a defense mechanism. All of these things are false accesses. They are false identities. So instead of you being in alignment and understand that your identity is that you're a God and Goddess incarnate, you believe in all of these false things, or you believe I'm in danger, I have to attack, or I have to defend, I have to protect, I fear I'm going to lose this, therefore I have to strike, fight or flight. And a lot of us do this in past lives or even in this lifetime. And because of this, we have a false axis, something that's slightly tilted. Instead of being straight on and connected directly vertically to spirit, we have something that tilts to the side. And that false belief and that false axis is a false identity. It's not real. It's not really who we are. But some of us can occupy these places of fear and vulnerability for a very long time. But what's happening right now, because of the acceleration and because the energies of the galactic equator, truth, authenticity, and transparency, is asking us to change and transform this, or else we're going to go to the wrong place. So these things are going to come to you. All these false accesses and this relationship you have to people, places, and things where there is karma, meaning you may have offended somebody in the past and you need to make correction. So these relationships will become explosive and in your face. And as they show up, you need to figure out your 50%. And when you do, you ask for forgiveness. The only way out to actually correct the karma is forgiveness and love. You have to ask for forgiveness. And once you release and you let go and you keep repeating it over and over again, please forgive me, forgive me. And then eventually that forgiveness and you offer love, the person who's at the other end, or the entity or the group or the thing, or it could be animals, it could be spiritual being. Sometimes we are angry against God, we're angry against angels, we're angry against deceased people. We are upset with them for all the wrong reasons. And as this is going on, you're gonna have to align your consciousness in a completely different way to those things by asking for forgiveness. Once you understand the false belief that you're holding something that's not actually Virgo. You're holding something that's slightly tilted. And once you understand that, you can begin to release the false identity. And the interesting thing is that once you begin to understand, for example, you realize in a past life, I was such a know-it-all, and I said all these things and did all these things that were not correct and all that against this person, and I want to ask them for forgiveness. But you're not only going to ask this person for forgiveness, but you're going to have to also ask yourself for forgiveness for being so broken and so scared and so vulnerable. And this is key as well, because a lot of us think that we should be perfect from the get-go. You're going to have to ask yourself for forgiveness for being so vulnerable and so petty at times and so afraid and striking at people and at things when in fact it's not necessary. You see what I'm saying? And so it's important for us to understand the scope. And as you forgive yourself for being tilted, for being slightly off axis, then by forgiving yourself, asking for forgiveness of the person, but also forgiving yourself, then the true axis of what you were supposed to be doing at that moment will show up, and that will become the model that you will follow for going forward for the next for your future. Is this making any sense?
Oh my gosh, Pierre, it is exactly what happened to me this week, and perfect that you're describing what I kind of stumbled upon, an issue that I've been dealing with for some time, asking forgiveness, and yet it still lingered. So I realized that I hadn't forgiven myself, and I was punishing myself. Even after perhaps forgiveness had been granted, I was refusing to forgive myself.
Mm.
And that I had to, of course, say the Ho'oponopono to myself. But what I did, and this kind of evolved, I didn't know I was going to do it. I went back to that time, well, it was in this lifetime, but earlier in my life, and I recreated the whole scene very differently. I imagined it as my having said and done things the way I now would do them. And I spoke and did that in the presence of the people that I wronged by saying something that was hurtful to them, not intentionally, but out of my own issues of being tilted, as you say. So, but um, but it's interesting that you talk about that now because it's exactly what um, what came to me this week after WESOC. It seemed like more truth was coming to the surface.
Mm. What you just said there was profound, by the way. The idea of going back to the event that occurred and recreated it, but with a different scenario and outcome now that you have enlightened consciousness.
Mm.
That is very powerful. In primordial culture, when a child or somebody wakes up in the morning and said, I had a bad dream, the way the shaman or the primordial leaders of that culture deals with this, I know this from back home. They ask you to go back into the dream. While you're awake, you remember all the details of the dream and everything else, and whatever was the boogeyman that was running after you, you confront them.
Mm.
And you unmask who they are and what they are trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
You change the outcome. It's potent. And one can almost say that it's magical because what it does is that it corrects and it repairs. This is really powerful stuff. These are deep, deep golden secrets.
Well,
And
it really cleared a great deal of the issue. I have to still wonder if I need to revisit it for past life connections as well. But it really shifted the whole vibration. But that was interesting to me also that I was punishing myself
yes,
continuously throughout all my adult life. But um, but that
Janice, we all do this.
hmm,
So it's not a question of just asking the person for forgiveness, but once you discover your offense, you need to forgive yourself.
right,
And that's the hardest part.
right. Yes, it was. And it was understanding what was in me that was tilted that caused it so that I could find a route to addressing that part of the issue.
Yeah, and then once you discover it, sometimes I discover things and I'm like, I'm dumbfounded. I'm so shocked and so overwhelmed that I have to ask God and spirit as I'm talking silently to myself in listening and hearing mode. I asked God, I said to God, show me the appropriate behavior. How would God us react?
Mm-hmm.
Show me what I should have done.
Yes. Anyway, just
This is powerful. I'm so happy. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you.
oh, thank you.
I'm so happy for you. This is powerful stuff. This is powerful stuff because it means that that part of you're making a karmic correction. This is huge. This is in the tail end of WESOC, and you're already making that karmic correction. And you know what this does as well? Once you address one and you realize how successful it was, and you feel elated and so high from it, you want to run inside and try to resolve all the other ones.
Form a line.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. Form a line, create a queue and start working one at a time, just one at a time. Just keep going because and quickly, if you do this, you will correct and repair so much karma. And remember, enlightenment and ascension begin once you have resolved and corrected 51% of your karma.
Mm.
Once you have made these in deep correction, when you realize that was a false identity, that was a false belief, there was a part of me that was fractured and broken, that was afraid, that caused me to react and say these things. Or there was a weakness. Let's say, for example, in your early days, you were an alcoholic, or I was talking to clients who had substance issues the past 2 days. And if that is an issue and etc., what is it in the codependency of your family dynamic that created this? Because addiction is a cover-up for a deeper hurt. It's medication to numb people from something that's much deeper.
Mm.
What is that deeper hurt? And if you can discover it, then you can say, okay, and my client is sober now, been sober for many years, but the issue that they're dealing with right this moment is still the same than when they were addicted, because the karma has not been corrected. There is no substance anymore, but the behavior is the same.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing.
You see what I'm saying? So what Melchizedek was offering her, Lord Melchizedek was offering us, is a deeper and more greater understanding that all of these false identities have to go. And it's not just one tilted axis. There are multiple. We're like if you can think of a bush with multiple sprouts of bamboo that are tilted in all different directions. Our core has all of these things in them. That one is that one is connected to that comma, and you have to keep correcting. Every time you correct, the tilted axis go back to the center and reinforce the core. And then the other one reinforces. The other one gets corrected and reinforced. And the center becomes thicker, bigger, and wider every time.
Mm.
And eventually, it becomes as big as your entire head. And at that moment, this is at 51%. At that moment, enlightenment begins. What does enlightenment mean? You become consciously immortal. You become aware that you're not disconnected to anything. You become consciously aware of who and what you really are. And at that moment, things shifts dramatically. Because now you are so consciously aware that you initiate, or you begin the process of initiating conscious immortality, enlightenment, basically. Any other comments or questions? So think about the people in your life that are, or the situation in your life that seems to be combative or difficult, or old things that are in your past that seem to be reoccurring, that keeps coming back over and over again. It's the same people, the same situation, that there's karma in it. There's karma in it. And again, it's not retribution, it's not revenge, it's not vengeance. God is not vindictive. That's not what's happening. It's just an opportunity for you, as we just described, for you to correct and to repair a tilted axis that created a false belief, a false identity. Sometimes you may think that you're Bambi, but actually you're not Bambi. Sometimes you may be Ursula the Witch. Sometimes you may be slightly Cruella de Vil. Sometimes you're a little Bo Peep. And sometimes you are, Ariel. So why I'm saying this is because I want you to understand that as a human being, we are our psyche is extremely complex. It is not one thing. It is not a singularity of expression, that because we have multiple personas that we express, our multiple identities that we express depending on the situation that around us. When we are with our intimate partner, we react and behave in a certain way. When we are with colleagues from work, we react in a certain way. We behave in a certain way. When we are on the street, we behave, particularly a city like New York, where things are so combative right now. Everybody has to watch their back, a lot of people who are mentally ill. There's a lot of stuff going on that your awareness of your surrounding and your boundaries have to be on alert, or at least you have to create protection around you, right? So that's a different identity. And we can move from one to the next, to the next, to the next with ease. But what we have to ask ourselves, those personas, the personas are like, if you can think in the Greek tragedies, the persona was a mask that the actor would put in their face and become the character. So you can think of those false identity almost like a mask that you wear. And all these masks exist in your psyche. And they are necessary because they are a way for you, for your authentic core, to connect and socialize with the rest of humanity. I'm really, I want you to understand this carefully, because those personas you cannot eliminate all of them. You can certainly reassign some of them with a more enlightened purpose, but you cannot eliminate them because they are part of your psyche. There's a part of you, there's a persona or an archetype inside of you that's your defense and your protection. And that's what you need in a situation where you feel threatened. Okay, you need that strong persona to be able to help protect you, fight or flight. You can't go namaste and throw love when somebody's trying to attack you and trying to punch you. There are other personas and identities that all, there's the seducer, there is the destroyer, there is the wise person, there is the mother, the father. There are multiple aspects. The psyche is a mosaic of multiple personas or archetypes that we have to somehow allow to cohabit and coexist in us, and to cohabit and coexist in harmony. An ascended master, for example, connects deeply to their seducer archetype. You would think the negative aspect of a seducer archetype is to be hedonistic and to be completely connected with your sexuality and all of that. There is that lower vibration of it. But the higher octave, you seduce for God. You use that energy to convey to people your passion and your intoxication for spirit and for God. That's the higher aspect and the higher octave of this. No ascended master, no celestial being that's on earth can do their work without connecting to that seducer. Because that's the way we broadcast. So we have all of this multiple personas and part of ourselves. And some of us, because of religious upbringing, for example, the seducer archetype is something that the church is telling us is a bad thing. So we suppress and repress its expression. And we shove it down so deep in the subconscious mind that it begins to surface instead of for God, for higher purpose. It becomes to surface in twisted and corrupt manners because we are not dealing with it. We don't deal with the destroyer archetype because we're afraid of it. Yes, the destroyer archetype is capable of leveling things and laugh out loud, laugh out loud as if nothing happened just for sport. But the destroyer archetype can also help you when you're in danger, not only when you're in danger, but it can help you also get rid of spiritual attacks. Psychic attack that's trying to break the boundary of your own psyche. The destroyer archetype also gives you a sense of control. Although, albeit because it's destroying, give you a sense of control and power. And I have to tell you that once you have accepted And you cannot remove any of these archetypes. It would be to the effect of me trying to remove my liver and trying to exist without my heart or my lungs. Everybody on earth is connected to all these archetypes. We have inside of us an entire menagerie of multiple sub-personalities and patterns of behaviors that are identities that we sometimes step in. And a lot of times, you know when you've done it, when a situation presents itself and you react in a certain way, and after it's done, you're like, I don't know what came over me. I don't know what came over me. Why did I react this way? Well, the part of you that is created to deal with that situation in your psyche took over. Now, what is needed is that, you know, like, for example, my shadow. I had a huge experience with my shadow. I've spoken about this in other class. I'm not going to get into all the details. I spent 3 years unconsciously channeling my shadow without knowing I was doing it. When I realized this, I had to negotiate. I had to have a conversation with that part of me and say, you need to, the thing you don't want to do is that you don't want these archetypes and these other sub-personalities to control your conscious self all the time. Because whatever is subconscious, desire to be conscious. But if you let them in charge, their negative and positive or positive aspect, it doesn't matter, will take over. And you, the chooser, your ego, your actual true core and axis, which is your unique manifestation of God that's in the middle of all this, will not have a voice because you're being hijacked by these sub-personalities. And sometimes the sub-personalities, let's say the destroyer might be fighting with the wise one internally inside of you. And so we need to be very aware of all of these dynamics. And what we need to do as the chooser, as the dominant personality, the actual part that's conscious, is to talk to all of them, each one of them individually, and say, I know you all exist and you're essential for the economy and the health of my entire psyche. I have no desire to extract you, kill you, or destroy you. But I need you to step back. There is the warrior archetype, there is the destroyer, there are multiple of them. So you have to say, I need you to step back because I need to be in charge. I will call on you when I need you. When I need the warrior to defend me, I will call. When I need the wise one, when I need the seducer, when I need the child, when I need the mother or the father, I will call on you. And when you can do this, you create internal peace. And actually, the archetypes themselves, those fragments, the sub-personality, are looking for you to do this. They are seeking for somebody because they're internally constantly jousting for conscious expression. And if you can do this, then all of a sudden, you're giving them a conduit through which they can come to the surface when it's needed. And that will automatically give them a sense that, and internally inside of you, you will go into a state of what Jung calls integration. You will have created peace within yourself. Okay, I've said a lot. Any questions, any comments?
Yeah, you said, well, the ascended or celestial beings also have these personas or multiple personalities, perhaps at a higher octave. And we are created in God's image. Does that mean God has these sub-personalities too?
Everything exists in God, absolutely. And you know, Janice, one of the most beautiful thing about all of this, I'll be honest with you, when you do that kind of inner work and you deal with all, you see inside of you, there is a destroyer that's capable of doing and all kinds of destructive thing. When I was managing, accidentally connecting to my destroyer with not knowing it, and I would used to go to parties and I would cut everybody and start cackling and laughing with with glee, with glee, not knowing, and I'm like, what's wrong with me? What it gave to me when I finally resolved this, it took me 3 years. When I finally resolved it, it gave me profound compassion for people who are struggling with the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have incredible empathy for other people that I see that are struggling with similar things because I know where they are and I know the struggle that they're in. And I can give them a lifeline.
So it sounds like, except that it is being expressed, perhaps, as you mentioned, on a lower octave, it's then, I suppose, a good thing that these are all at our service to call out the individual as the need is presented.
Absolutely. No one can exist without the archetypes. Those fragments that exist inside of you are the very metrics of life itself. Because at some point, you're going to have to express your seducer archetype. At some point, your warrior, your destroyer, your wise person, your child, your mother, your father. You're going to have to get in touch with them. And there is a set, because everyone on the planet, you can think of the archetypes almost like riverbeds. They are not the water, but they are the riverbed. And when, depending on the number of rock or sediment that's in the riverbed, it can create turbulence or it can create flow.
Mm.
And it is up to you to determine what sediment and what rock or dirt is in that river by negotiating the peace.
It's like it's in our DNA then. It's part of our...
There is not one human being on the planet, or celestial being for that matter, that doesn't have them. On the celestial being of high level, it's so ascended and transcendental, it has been reassigned a higher purpose.
Mm.
If you can think of Chiron having sustained a wound from an arrow that was tainted with the blood of a demon in his leg, and he had this pain for years, and he couldn't cure it, and what he eventually did is pray to Zeus, and Zeus elevated him into the heaven. And because he was a master archer, he became Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm. People who are diagnosed with a mental illness, multiple personalities, whatever the diagnosis is called, then are just suffering a condition wherein one of the subpersonalities has been allowed to take dominance.
Yes, and their conscious self is not in charge.
So our conscious self versus these personalities. What makes our conscious self us? What's different?
Well, those sub-personalities will take over, and you are not conscious. You are not in charge of the behavior. You see yourself doing it, but you can't control it.
Right. So what is it? I don't know how to quite ask this. What did our conscious self is perhaps one of these sub-personalities, then, would you say?
Your conscious self is, okay, the analogy would be to think of an iceberg. It's not my analogy, but it's Jung's analogy. The tip of the iceberg is the conscious self. Everything else, all of the other sub-personality, are below the water.
I see. But the conscious self has its own characteristics, right? It's not like it's...
Yes. And the conscious self can be fractured itself.
Mm.
particularly when you think you're the wrong thing. Okay? The conscious self itself can be fractured too. Now, these archetypes will naturally pop up to your defense or your protection when you're in danger or you're facing something where the warrior needs to be present or the seducer and all that. It will take over. It will do what life. It's the forces of life. They are way bigger than us. Because if you look at an iceberg, what's under the water is way, way more bigger than what's in the surface. They are vast and they're immense. But the conscious self can negotiate a truce to align the conscious self to the purpose of all the archetype to create cohesive integration.
So it's like multifacets to a diamond or a precious stone.
Yes.
Part of the stone, and you wouldn't want to take them away to rip or cut the stone so there were no facets, because it would not be as precious or valuable.
Yes. And I'm saying this because I want you to understand that a lot of people misconstrue the true inner teaching of true alchemy and true transmutation, because what they want to do because of religious dogma is that they want to cut all these things out. They want to amputate them out. You cannot amputate them. What you have to do is that you have to reprogram them into supporting you, aligning with the purpose of because my destroyer comes in when I need it. I remember, I'm going to give you an example. After my little thing with the destroyer, not my little thing, or a big thing, because it was a major learning thing for me. And 3 years, I couldn't understand. I don't want to get into the detail now. When I do a class on the shadow, I can talk about this in greater details, because it will create a side tangent. But I remember being in a spiritual setting. And the area where we were in the city, there was a methadone clinic down the street. And everybody was all love and light. And I was in the kitchen helping out to set up some food. And a drug addict, a methadone drug addict, came in, opened the door, and collapsed on the floor at the entrance. Everybody in the entire environment, in the entire setting, even the elders, came in and wanted to do healing on this man. I walked from the back where I was setting up the table with the food and everything else, and the coffee and drinks and everything. And I walked right out, and I walked right in the. I said, "You're getting out of here!" My destroyer, in less than a minute and a half, he was out of the door. People were trying for 35 minutes to get him out. And everybody was like, it came in like this. And whatever that needed to be said to get this man off the private property was said. If I remember correctly, I may have said that my archetype said something. I'm calling the police right now. And you're getting out with such authority and such power. This man was out in a minute and a half or less. 35 minutes of cajoling, of trying to blah, blah, blah. Should we call the ambulance? We should call 911. Should we You know how sometimes methadone people they slump over and they seem to be in a coma? That kind of thing was going on for 35 minutes. And I was at the back doing all the thing. I just got fed up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to end this. Because none of these people are addressing this with they were using the wise one archetype, the love archetype, to deal with something that needed to be addressed with a different archetype. And since I was connected to it, I let it step in. And it was dealt with like this. I hope this helps.
And I was just thinking about in my career singing many different roles, even if it's not operatic, many different characters in the individual arias and so on, would call upon multiple different emotional states that to be expressed that would be maybe, as I'm thinking of it now, allowing that subpersonality to express itself. Maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, the Metzos, they say bitches, witches, and mothers are there.
Exactly. It's the mask. Exactly.
Well, I guess as long as you can put them back to bed, it's okay. But
that's the point. That's exactly the point. The point is that when they finish what they are doing, you have to ask them to retreat back so that the conscious self can be in charge. Mm. Otherwise, they remain behind and they're going to create havoc. That's the key.
And part of that,
you have to thank them for their service. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you deeply. Now you need to step back.
And it would seem to be that the ability to do that is reliant upon you not being broken in your conscious self.
Yes, and also it's about listening internally with what exists in you and having inner conversation with those thoughts.
I see. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Thank you.
When I finally realized that my destroyer, what my destroyer was, that it was the destroyer archetype that I was channeling, I let it out one time, and I didn't know any better, because no one was guiding me. I just did this on instinct one time, and it was running amok. And when I realized what I needed to do, again by instinct, I began to connect to that energy. I began to go internal, and I actually saw her. I saw her. I saw what she was wearing. She gave me her name. We had a conversation, multiple conversations. And I know the sub-personality extremely well, as I know other ones as well, like the wise one, the seducer, and all. I know all of them very well, because over the years, I remember when I went in, I said, I'm not trying to get rid of you. And because when most people connect to, particularly for what's so-called a dark archetype, okay, they think it's dark. What everyone wants to do, they want to amputate it. But when you cannot lie to these things, because they are you. If your desire, because of your religious dogma, is to amputate them, they will know. And they will resist and they will battle you. But if you go in and said, you're part of me, I can't get rid of you, but the way you're being expressed now, let's say if the seducer archetype is coming in at the wrong time and being perverted and expressing itself in the wrong manner, I need your higher octave. I want you in my life, but I need you now to help me broadcast the love and the care and the passion for God. My intoxication for God, I need you to help me. I need you to bring this forth in my speech, in my behavior, so that others can see it, and it can allow a broader broadcast.
So are you saying that the destroyer personality would not elevate to that level unless you asked it to?
Yes, you have to negotiate with them. And this is true of all the archetypes. And the destroyer cannot do what the seducer is doing. They all have separate roles. It's a different mask.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to broadcast and try to for God and everything else, the destroyer cannot do it. You have to connect to the seducer.
But as you develop, as I develop and grow in my own conscious self, it's not enough then that the other subpersonalities will be elevated as well. I have to negotiate with them individually.
Yes, you have to have a conversation with them.
Okay.
You have to have a conversation with them.
Okay.
And then as you have the conversation, they will align and they will come at peace. The moment they see that you're coming with sincerity and with truth, and you're trying to actually create order, because they fight amongst themselves. Because each one of them is a splinter psyche. And it's a splinter psyche inside. Let me explain it correctly. It's a splinter psyche inside of yourself individually. But to the collective unconscious, there is a bigger destroyer archetype. There's a bigger seducer archetype. There's a bigger wise one or inner child archetype. So you need to create the peace within you with all of them. And once you do this, you can tap into the bigger one. And the bigger one that's more collective, has way much power and way much ability to transform and transmute and create true alchemy and change.
I see the importance of it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions, any comments? Now, as we move forward, what's going to happen is that your subpersonality is going to be also, what's the word I'm looking for? As we go through the change and the presentation of karma, the acceleration, because we're going through a quickening, truth, authenticity, and transparency coming from the galactic core, is going to accelerate all of these things for us and bring them to the forefront. And we're going to have to figure out a way, as I was describing in the first part of the class, to negotiate the correction and the repair for each one of them. But I don't want to give you the impression that just because you negotiated something with someone and then you have a tilted axis that shifted up, and then you now believe yourself to be that axis, that axis is actually, or that belief system is the ultimate system, and you're going to park your car permanently in that spot, and it's going to remain there. What will happen, given the fact that we have to travel so far from 3D all the way into 5D? What's going to happen is that a few months from now, that now parked axis is going to reveal even a higher octave to itself. Think of it as multiple tributary stream that runs into a river. You're going to discover another branch, another thing that's going to add to what you already thought you were, let's say 2 months earlier. So unless you have flexibility and spiritual, psychic, and emotional agility, many of us who want to control and be so linear in our relationship to the economy of our own psyche, we're going to have a lot of problems. We should be able to understand, yes, this is what I believe myself to be at this moment because of this great breakthrough that I had. But it could be that 2 months from now, a deeper and more profound insight, because you have to understand that whatever it is that you believe, for example, Janice, in your situation where you discover, you ask yourself for forgiveness, you try to you forgive yourself for whatever it is that you thought the offense, and then all of a sudden you have this new revelation of what you should be. I can guarantee you, and you can tell me when that happened, a few months from now, you're going to get a more profound and deeper insight that whatever it is that you believe it to be now, it is much bigger.
I actually had a sense of that as well.
Okay? And because of this, this thing is perpetually growing. And it is the way it's supposed to be. Because what are we doing with all of these identities? We're trying to connect and become godlike. And since God is not a static point and God is perpetually expanding, those identities will perpetually expand and grow. This is advanced stuff. People who are not ready to do real inner work cannot do this. Because it is, if you're lazy, if you're, you're afraid of inner work, this is going to be terrifying to many people. But this is the necessary path that needs to be followed, because you have to be prepared with agility and saying, okay, for 2 months now or 3 months, I believe that access to be my truth, but here is a deeper and more profound meaning to this. Because now I've discovered, even like in music, I'm in a higher octave of this. And then there will be another higher octave, another higher, and it will keep expanding. And this is the way it should be. Until you're completely off the piano altogether and you're going into the music of the spheres.
Infinity times infinity.
Infinity times infinity. That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. I mean, this is the whole point of transcendence. So perfection as a goal is not a static point.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process. And I'm trying to acclimate us, because we, in 3D, we are so linear and thinking, we exist inside a box, which is a house or an apartment. We go there and we return there. What I'm saying is that there is a vibratory environment that's constantly morphing, changing, and growing as a morphogenic field. And we have to be able to be as pliable, as malleable as that, to allow our ego to ride the wave of this transformation and transmutation. So you're going to discover quite a bit about yourself in the process. And I think Lord Melchizedek in the channeling, closing channeling, was alluding to this by saying that, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And these identities will keep shifting and changing every few months or so. And because we are in 3D, so located, with the 3 axes, X, Y, and Z, we are so focused on being a point in space. But if you're opening ourselves up into 4D, 4D is space-time. It's seeing not only yourself in space, but any moment in time, backward and forward. And when you're seeing an object, or for that matter, a person, in 4D perception, you see them simultaneously in all timelines, forward and backward in time. It is extremely revealing, and you're going to see people's secrets. You're going to see all kinds of. This is why if you're not in a higher consciousness and you're not elevating, and if you're tactical and you're trying to gather information to use against people, you cannot enter that space-time continuum. You have to have done all the work that I described with all of various accesses and the removal of karma, moving into higher purpose transcendence, for you to be exposed and see other people's vulnerability. So that your ego could be in such rest and acceptance that you would not ever consider and think of using it against them. This is important because as the acceleration continue, as we continue to expand and we continue to grow, we're going to encounter all kinds of information, not only about ourselves, but about the world, people around us, and our relationship to them. I was sharing with a dear friend of mine that had a dream or some sort of experience about what was happening around them. Well, I saw this in the outside first, and then I saw it in my dream, or I saw it in my meditation, and therefore I have to be careful to not expose myself to too many stimuli, because otherwise it's going to influence me. And I said, it's the exact reverse. The outside and the inside are the same. If you saw something on the outside that didn't show up in your dream, it is because what's showing up for you on the outside, it's because the universe was trying to tell you, Pierre, you're not looking at this part of your psyche. And I'm going to give you a reminder on the outside world that you haven't resolved this part of this. And I'm going to give an experience that will be an external one. But if you don't get it, I'm going to bring it in your dream. I'm going to bring it in your meditation so that you will now know that this is something you need to work on. So that those external experiences are mirrors to accelerate karma and change. And if you're seeing things, if you're seeing animals, for example, certain kind of animals or insects that are showing up for you in your real life outside, and then you begin to dream about them, it's telling you, and you follow the symbol or the dream symbology of it, it's going to reveal to you what internally inside of you you're not addressing. Because that insect, that animal has a totem, and if you understand the totem will point out. And when I did this for my friend, all of a sudden he was like, oh my God, there's a part of me I'm not addressing. There's something I'm afraid of, and you're right. So it's not a question of putting yourself on a mountaintop in a monastery and closing yourself up, insulating yourself from stimuli. And even if you did, the universe would still find a way to bring to you, because the acceleration is going for all of us. It's truth, authenticity, and transparency. Now, having said all of this, what is essentially our authentic self? Because we've spoken about multiple subpersonalities and archetypes and multiple things. What is really authentic? Your authenticity is a point of extreme vulnerability. It typically is a part of you that is so fragile, so breakable, that even you staring at it would break the sanctity of that core. It is a part of you that is so true and so simple that we basically end up burying it and creating all these masks to hide it from the world. Because what the world wants are mirrors and copies of the same thing. They want us to use the mask to become the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect husband, the perfect this, the perfect friend, the perfect etc., the perfect worker. Whereas your authentic core is something else. And that core, most of us bury it like a buried treasure because we don't want the world to see it for fear that we would be rejected. And that would break us apart. Yet that core, that authentic self, that vulnerable point, is exactly what you have to express to the world. There is a reason why this universe is a universe of courage. It's because we have to find the courage through all of the domestication of multiple accesses, identities, and personalities. We have to find the courage to let out that authentic core, that vulnerable point. Because if we can express it, and I'm not saying go, on the internet and expose it on TikTok or on Instagram, on IG. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about trying to find maybe once you have discovered that it's a point of extreme vulnerability that exists in your core. When you do your dantian, when you do your inner listening to your core, there's a point inside of you where you're like, I can't reveal this to the world. I have to hide it deeper. That is exactly your authentic core. That is your true identity. This is your unique expression of God. And this is exactly why you're here, is to figure out a way to go counter current to everything else that you're being told, to find a way to bring it forth and to express it. And when you're doing this, when you are capable of doing this, it will radically change everything about yourself. And moreover, when you're expressing your authentic self, and it's not going to be perfect, it's going to appear imperfect to you because it's vulnerable. It is vulnerable in the context of all of the false belief that you have created, but it is perfect within itself. And when you allow it to come through, you begin to remind other people around you. And again, at first, you express it to one person. If you can find the courage to express it to one person that loves you. And you may be crying and be vulnerable while you're expressing it. But when you do express it, what happened is that at the moment of the expression, and I know how that happened for me, as I expressed it, because people were very quiet every time I tried to bring that thing forward, my authentic core forward. And I thought for the longest time that the quiet that they were is because they were rejecting me, because I was weird and I was a weirdo and I had, I was the hunchback of Notre Dame. When I read that book, by the way, I cried for hours because I read it in French, Alexandre Dumas. When I read it, because I was the hunchback. I'm so bizarre and so weird. I identify with that being so much, with that character so much. And what I'm saying is that once you're able to do this, you will begin to realize very quickly that part of you that you think is deformed, that you're hiding to the world, that you don't want people to see because you think people are going to stomp over it and they will destroy you because it's so fragile. When you allow yourself to express it, that core will heal others. When I expressed it the few times I did and everybody was quiet, I got devastated. I thought to myself, no, they don't understand me. I was upset. I would cry. I would run out. I would cry. I would be upset. until one day somebody grabbed me after I expressed it and hugged me, said, thank you for sharing this. You moved me. I broke down even more because at that moment, every other instance or where I thought I was rejected collapsed back upon me. And I realized at that moment, the reason people didn't know what to say to me, it's because they were trying to process something that was so profound that it rocked their world. They didn't know what to say because they couldn't find words to express it, because I reminded them in the process of sharing this that they too have inside of them an authentic core, a true identity that they have never addressed. In fact, they may have even forgotten where the treasure is buried in them. Okay, I know I just leap into the, I just went very far, but any question, any comments?
It seems that you need to be careful where you reveal it, because there are going to be audiences or groups or people, places, things that are not going to be receptive to it. So you want to choose your audience well when you express it, number one. Number two, as we express it, as we lighten our load of false beliefs that provide less and less of that vulnerability, are we not helping others? And even without expressing it to others, in the sense that we're all connected. So what we do to improve ourselves assists others in that morphogenetic field. Wouldn't it be true?
Yes, it is true. And I have to say to you a couple of things. It is absolutely true. So initially, you want to express it to one person that you think is loving and caring for you. And when you do this, and again, if the person does not respond, because you confronted them with their own inner vulnerability. You're reminding them inside of them that they have the same core, that they have not even scratched the surface. So you're right. But over time, if you keep expressing this core over and over again, you're going to get more and more comfortable. And in fact, I'm going to say this. To truly ascend, every one of us have to express that authentic core. We have to find a way to allow it to become now the true axis of a core. Because it actually is the unique expression of God that we came here to broadcast. And that vulnerability is not a weakness. It is the root to create your superpower. You're not going to get it at first. It's going to feel very weak and very vulnerable, and you're going to break apart and you're going to be afraid. But over time, you will realize that, oh my God, it's a superpower. And every time I express it, the room is in my hand. Everybody becomes extremely quiet, and they're like, oh my God. And you realize that you're so relatable that people are now listening to every breath that you're taking, every whisper. And if anything else, you have now tapped into your ability to seduce for God, because you're finally revealing your truth. It's like a peekaboo show. You're finally stripping and revealing to the world who you really are. Any questions, any comments? Now, granted, initially, all the other subpersonalities and the karma and all that other stuff needs to be moved out of the way before you can find that authentic core. That authentic core is buried deep. Be deep. All of us do this. Because as we grow up as children, we understand very quickly, even from our parents, as we were infants before we even speak. We understand very quickly that the world is not designed to allow the complete expression of that core. So we bury it. So we need to remove all of these other identities out of the way. And once we have created the piece, then the core will begin to reveal itself. I remember the free time that I did exercise trying to find where that authentic core was. I can tell you that initially I thought I didn't have a core anymore because I kept moving false identity, false accesses, false this, false that. I'm like, I've been doing this for 2 days now, 3 days. I, maybe there is no core. I buried it so deeply, I don't know where it is anymore. When I found it, what I saw visually in my consciousness was a series of logs that were burning. You know when a log is going to go out and there is nothing left but a little bit of amber, and it's all ash all around it? That's all that was left of my core. And I remember in the vision, I ran to it. I blew, and I'm like, no, 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 it can't extinguish. It can't extinguish. I have to allow it to grow. And I snapped immediately out of it. That's the visual I got.
I have to just give an example of what I think might have been the intention of this Facebook post that I shared. You may have seen a woman, an elderly woman, dressed in the most fantastical way with all kinds of costumey like uh, glasses and furs or whatever, feathers and so on. And the caption read, "People often mistake me as an adult because of my age."
Yes.
So that's being who you are, no matter what uh, you're supposed to be.
Exactly. 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 Any other questions or comments? All right, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll do a closing meditation. 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as we inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Let your mind and your heart sync with each other. And notice what you noticed. Become aware of any sensations, perceptions, or insights that your core is trying to share with you. Listen. Listen as if the more than 50 trillion cells in your body had ears. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. Listen. Become aware of any false belief, false identities, and false accesses. That may exist in your core. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And as you discover all of the false accesses, gently move them behind you. Now find your authentic core. Your authentic nature is a point of extreme vulnerability, fragility, and breakability. Whatever false identities that are in the way, move them behind you. Become aware of this fragile, vulnerable, and breakable part of your core that holds a cherished treasure that you're afraid to express and show the world. Let my call be visible to me. And allow me to remember my unique expression of the divine. The true purpose and dharma that I came into the world to share, to broadcast, with humanity. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you. Thank you, Pierre.
You're welcome. You're very welcome, Janice. Any comments or questions for anyone else before we close? I want to thank all of you for listening to me. If you're listening to us on Patreon, thank you for your support. If you're listening to us on YouTube, subscribe, like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, increase the algorithm. And I'm sending you my deepest love, and I'll talk to you next week. Blessing, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night. Good night, Janet. Good night, everyone.
Love you.
Love you more. Bisous, bisous.